Hi everyone, welcome back to Off the Record. Today's episode covers a situation that draws a lot of attention. Francis Whittleston, a professor whose views on Canadian residential school history have sparked national debate, and a recent visit she made to a university in Winnipeg where things became tense, to say the least. We wanted to be very clear from the start. Off the Record is a neutral platform. We don't take political sides. We don't aim to push a specific narrative. Our mission is to create a space for respectful, open conversations, especially when topics are complex, emotional, and deeply personal. In preparing for this episode, we spoke with Francis to hear her perspective on the events and the reactions she received. We also reached out to members of the Indigenous community who were present during Francis's visit, and you'll hear their voices, experiences as a part of this conversation as well. Our goal is not to decide who is right or wrong. It's to listen, to ask thoughtful questions, and to offer our audience the opportunity to understand different points of view. We know this is a sensitive topic for many, and we approach it with care and respect for everyone involved. Let's begin with Francis's account of what happened. Just to explain more to you about Off the Record, I should have probably done that at the start. We're aiming for audience familiar with bills, and I know there's a whole team right and left. We're trying to be a neutral stance and hear both sides and help people come to an understanding of both sides, because we feel that there's too much group polarization, and we feel like us as citizens can actually lose our rights very quickly when we're divided rather than united. So that is our goal. It's our purpose here, is to break up group polarization and echo chambers. So kind of a neutral standing, if that makes sense. And the Spectrum Street epistemology does just that. And that's why it is amazing for education. Matter of fact.
And I've been going to campuses across the country to do this, which is a sort of a method for trying to understand why people believe the things that they do. And this seemed to be going very well. And then I hit Winnipeg. And Winnipeg was like another level of crazy. That was the craziest of the crazy. And so now there's all sorts of things going on in terms of, because I was assaulted and my cameraman feared for his life. And we are trying to hold a whole bunch of people to account for what happened at the University of Winnipeg.
Yeah. You're fighting for academic freedom, is that correct?
That's correct. So academic freedom is the ability to pursue the truth at universities without having a prescribed doctrine, a predetermined conclusion imposed upon you, or having the institution engage in forms of institutional censorship, which seems to be quite prominent, this problem, in many universities across Canada. Some of them are worse than others, but there's really no university where you can feel comfortable saying what you think is true if you tread upon particular sensitive subjects. Indirectly, so much of me, it was my cameraman, Daniel Page, who feared for his life because there's a bunch of gangsters there, Aboriginal gangsters, several Aboriginal gangsters. They pushed him off campus, they manhandled him, they put their hands all over his camera and stuff, and refused to allow him to enter the campus for about 2 hours while I was being assaulted by all these women. But I found it somewhat comical at the time, because I wasn't fearful, because they were just trying to shove me and stuff. But the problem is that the men, if the men tried to help me, they would get roughed up by all these gangsters. So this was kind of the bit of the problem, is that the men were in serious danger because they were trying to help me. This is kind of the ongoing.
Oh, what a mess. And this is not...
What a mess.
This is not what the Spectrum Street epistemology approach is about either.
No, in my view, the way forward in universities, because it doesn't get people pitted against one another. It gets people to think about why they believe the things that they do and what they would require to become less certain or more certain of the claim. So I really like that about it, because it gives people an opportunity to try to understand other positions more and not get trapped into this kind of tribalistic kind of thing that I have seen happen with the late Charlie Kirk's approach.
I do agree. The prove me wrong method. I think, and this is what I was expressing to students as well, is I think where we're struggling in society is that we have broken off into group polarization, echo chambers, and mob mentality. Mm-hmm. And because the way social media works, the more you watch something, the more it shows up on your algorithm.
We need a public inquiry into universities in Alberta. So the way the Alberta government is dealing with this is not sufficient to combat the complete capture, ideological capture by universities. And then that can have some experts or university professors. Like, I know some great university professors who I think should take maybe be seconded to, take on an overseeing role of it. And I would recommend Sinclair McRae, who is a philosophy professor from Mount Royal University, who would be a good person to kind of head this kind of inquiry. And then he could investigate these matters, and we could talk about what kind of curriculum is needed for people to be able to get a well-rounded education. And that doesn't mean not examining some of these perspectives that are very dominant now. It's just examining them in a more academic approach, which is not a politicized activist approach, but a truth-seeking approach. And but we have been sort of taken over by a very strange position, which is often called wokeism, but it's really what would be called Marcusianism, which is the views of Herbert Marcuse, which is about bringing about the revolution through affirming the identities of groups perceived to be oppressed, that kind of idea. And that's not, oppressed groups have no stranglehold on the truth. That's not how academic environments work. But this is now dominating all sorts of areas, as well as what's called corporate managerialism, which is the idea of proportionality, that you should have, if you have 7% Aboriginal people in the province, then 7% of the managers and 7% of the professors should be Aboriginal. That kind of idea, which is kind of corporate. Both of those are not what should be happening in the university. And so we need to seriously examine this if we want to save our universities, or if the government just wants to get rid of them, which maybe that's its agenda, I don't know. But if we do think our universities are important, we need a public inquiry to kind of figure out what's gone wrong.
Is that what you would suggest, to a politician? Like, if a politician was looking for feedback of how to, I guess, fix this dominance, political ideas that are being presented in universities and schools, this is what you would suggest?
Yes. Get the government to back what I'm trying to do, which is to restore universities to places where you can discuss ideas. Because what happened at the University of Winnipeg, I can't get professors to invite me to do this because they're afraid of being targeted by their activist colleagues. And the unions are completely captured, and the unions give signals that they will not defend professors who go against the ideology. So in the case of University of Winnipeg, for example, Peter J. Miller, who's the president of the University of Winnipeg Faculty Association, put out a statement. I still can't believe that this happened. He is a complete embarrassment, this guy, saying that it was a fact that Canada had committed genocide against the Aboriginal population. He said that was a fact. And that is not a fact. That's an argument, but you would have to weigh all the facts and the evidence to make that determination. And he talked about the lies that denialists were peddling, which was directed at me. So he defamed me. That's the union. The head of the union did this. So you can imagine what all the faculty members are thinking.
So when you came, did they have like kind of a preconception of what you were about because of this email?
Yeah, well, all the professors, like I know professors at the University of Winnipeg, and they wouldn't come near it. You know, they couldn't come near this event because now they're going to be targeted. They're going to be told, you know, they're a denialist sympathizer or whatever. They're emboldening hate speech. They're doing this. They hate Aboriginal people. All these kinds of endless kinds of accusations that they would endure if they showed up to support me.
The issues that occurred while you were at the school, do you think you're going to pursue legal action towards this?
Yes. I've got the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms already. First of all, there's the criminal charges. And this is very difficult in Winnipeg because Winnipeg is a city where civilization has broken down. And I know that sounds strong, but it's not. Civilization is when you have a geographical area with laws that apply to everyone. No one's outside the law. All the laws apply. That's not happening in Winnipeg. And the police service, the Winnipeg Police Service, after I was assaulted by 7 women, one of the main figures in the assault was this quote-unquote grandma who was celebrated by the police on September 30th. I will push this to the end. No one is going to get away with what happened, in my view. Now, the police might not do anything, but everything has substantial video coverage of what occurred. So, and I have my mats were damaged. They got painted orange, 3 of them. They stole my mats. They painted them orange. They poured water on my sound system. They punched Daniel Page in the face. One of these people. It was just beyond. It was beyond belief, and we have it all covered on video, so no one can get out of this. But because this has been going on for so long in Winnipeg, people they can't face up to it right now.
But I'm curious what they're going to say. Like, you know, I'm curious to hear what they have to say. I can tell you
what they're going to say. It's not very hard to imagine. Widdowson was uttering hate speech. She is a person who is very dangerous because if people hear her, they deny the terrible harms that were done to Aboriginal people. And in order to ensure we have reconciliation, Widdowson needed to be shut down.
Because there's a label that has been put on you? Or is it...
Yeah, I'm a residential school denier. Residential school denier. That's the label, which for me means 2 things. I deny that the remains of 215 children have been confirmed at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, and I deny that the residential schools were genocide. So those two claims, and I had many conversations with Aboriginal people, they think that those claims are true, and anyone who denies them is a hate monger and should not be allowed to utter these things, should be put in jail, perhaps should even be killed. I had people saying that I belonged underground when they were surrounded. So they don't think they're going to be held to account, and maybe they won't be. But it's a huge wake-up call. Like, if you don't want your city to become like Winnipeg, then you can't be pandering to the Aboriginal activists. The Aboriginal activists should be held to the same legal standard as everyone else is. And if they aren't, they'll learn to get away with criminal behavior, and they're going to become more criminally oriented. My message is that especially about the free speech bills against that are trying to control free speech, is that, free speech is the most fundamental value in a democratic society, because it is the value that enables us to determine all other values. I think that was Sam Harris that put forward that argument, which makes sense, because how else will we determine whether we should, have a socialist system or a capitalist system or whatever it may be if we can't discuss it? Mm-hmm. If you can't discuss things, the only thing that is open to a society is violence. Mm-hmm. And so if we're worried about things like what happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the first thing that the Nazis did is they took out, the professors in universities, and they clamped down on people's ability to discuss things. And that, of course, allowed them to assert, an iron fist over the entire society. So if we want to stop the movement of fascism forward, because that's what these bills are, they're fascist, we need to adopt the American model on this, which is the Brandenburg test, which is incitement. So if you're inciting violence, you're inciting criminal acts, that's illegal. But if you're not doing that, if you're not defaming people, it's open for discussion. So you can talk about whether, and this is a very, very controversial idea, whether pedophilia is beneficial or not, just as an example. That's just an idea, mm-hmm. But you can't start encouraging people to go and molest children. Now it's a criminal act. So one is the idea that you're thinking through in your mind. The other is actually trying to get people to engage in this criminal act. Those are two separate things. And that's how society should be organized. Is you should be able to talk about ideas, but you should not be able to incite criminal activity.
I really appreciate you taking your time to come and take this interview. We'll close it off there, but thank you so much for joining us. And you can go and see Francis's content on YouTube and Facebook.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. See ya. As a part of this episode, we made a sincere effort to include the voices of perspectives of Indigenous people who were present at the Winnipeg school during the incident involving Francis Whittleston. So we had one of our teammates, Jerem, reach out to one of the respected Indigenous elders who was there that day with the incident with Francis. He reached out to her in a private message, inviting her to share her experience and to recollect what happened. So the person we reached out to, and I apologize greatly and sincerely if I'm saying this name wrong, but we reached out to Shingoose. Initially, she expressed interest in participating and sent us this message. Hi Jerem, I will consider the interview. I would like to have Viv Ketchum in the interview as well. Let me know if this works. I will still need to ask Vib. End quote. Unfortunately, after further consideration and discussion with Vib, they both made the difficult decision not to move forward with the interview due to concerns for their safety and well-being. Shingoose later sent this message. Good evening. I spoke with Viv and we both made a decision not to do the interview. Considering the depth of threats and daily violence we receive from FW and her followers, we are declining. While we fully respect their decision and understand the importance of their safety, we still feel it's essential to reflect their voices in this conversation. To do that, we will be sharing this previously recorded video made by these women in which they express their thoughts, concerns, and reflections on the events involving Frances Whittleson. This segment is shared with deep respect for their voices and experience.
Been bullied and harassed, and it's online and by Frances W. So, and I'm sorry for smiling about it, but bullying hurts. So Grandma's experience is it really hurt me. Remember I shared story about all those messages I received for the 9 years that I was in residential school, and I've been sharing my story since 2015, 2010, and it's I've never experienced this before, and so I took her hate all in, her bullying, and but yesterday, the last few days, something really sparked in me, and I need to ignite that fire again, that I carried for the last, while since I've been sharing my story all these years, and I think she dislikes that we have a lot of followers, a lot of support, a lot of love, and I don't even think she doesn't like that. So she's getting attention with her hate and her hate speech. And so I wanted to share something that I wrote yesterday, and it was shared on my other social media. So her hate was, she called me a thug, a zombie, a gangster, and she cried me a cry bully because I cried in my video. I was crying about my granddaughter who passed away in April, and how she used to come with me to residential school at presentations, and so it was her 6-month anniversary on October the 5th. So, and she's seen that video, Frances seen that video, so she called me a cry bully. She calls me a professional victim. She calls me a savage, and I'm stupid. And but that's her biases, assumption, and racism coming out, So my version is, I'm a great-grandmother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm a mother. I'm a residential school warrior. I'm a beautiful Anishinaabe Kwe. I'm a small, cute grandma. I'm also a fun, joyful, humorous spirit. Hey, you guys know that. And I'm an Indigenous matriarch. I'm a knowledge carrier. Those teachings my late father taught me after residential school, I carry those. And that's me. So I blocked her and some of her followers because denialism is a hate crime. Denialism is hate speech. We are residential school warriors, and we're still here. Every child matters, including the 215 that she denies that happened, and she's saying it's a hoax. I defend them. I've been doing this since 2021 when the 215 came out. I've been their voice. Like, look at that photo back there. That's them. Like, you know, they're all taking care of each other. They're happy, hey? So with that, like, you know, she can't, she's being challenged by residential school survivors, and I think that she doesn't like that, and it's she's showing more hate, hey? But anyways, I want to read you something, okay, before I go. So this is something, since this is all happening, I've been getting a lot of messages, beautiful messages from people that show that love and support. But anyways, this one is from one of my daughters. You're my everything. You grew up without a mother figure, but knew how to be a mother. So she's saying you grew up without a mother figure, but knew how to be a mother. You were beaten and bruised, yet you showed us love and tenderness. You were taught hate and disrespect, yet you showed me love and taught me not to let the hate influence me. You came out of residential school only knowing you were to serve, yet you persevered and knew you were better than that. You raised 3 beautiful children with problems, yes, but that was allowed with the life you lived. You weren't taught how to be another because they took your mother away from you. Hey, oh, that's so touching. I'm going to read that again. You raised 3 beautiful children with problems, yes, but that was allowed with the life you lived. You weren't taught how to be another because they took your mother away from you. Imagine living a life without love and tenderness. You did, yet you showed me and my siblings love and tenderness, and I passed that on to my children. We broke the curse, Mom, she wrote. You did that. Remember that. You're powerful, unbreakable. I love you, and I will fight for you my whole life. Oh, that's so beautiful. So I just wanted to share that, and like I said, it's taking us residential school survivors to bring that denialism out, and I had never seen it like this before in the last 15 years since I've been presenting my story. But there's probably now over 30,000, maybe including here on TikTok, maybe over 40,000 who know my story. So I'm just going to continue to share my truth and share my story like nobody can deny that, hey? So take care, have a good weekend, and I love everybody. Love, not hate, hey? And don't go hating her, please. I love you all. Thank you.
Hi, it's Vivian here. Me and my other friends, as I call them, my sisters, are getting attacked by people of denialism. That's a new word that I've heard. It's basically people who are refusing to believe about anything about residential school, the graveyards and that of our little ones. They refuse to believe that there's truth. And I'm getting so many ugly stuff directed at me. I'm trying to do my best to ignore it. Yeah, attack me all you want. But when you start attacking my children, hey, that's a different story. Francis, listen, you mentioned what my children might have had to put up. You know what? My son was a youth community leader because I taught him, I raised him that way. He was an outstanding Indigenous youth leader in his community. And I'm damn proud of him. And that shows how I raised him. I'm using that as a past tense. Right now, I'm not telling you this, I'm not sharing this out of pity. But October, Thanksgiving, is a difficult time for me. My son passed away 2011 on Thanksgiving Day. I'm trying to deal with that. I'm trying to cope with that anniversary, his traveling day, as we like to call it. And I'm also trying to deal with the death of my brother. I'm not saying this to get pity at all. And I know there's other people, like the woman that she's accusing of, are also going through difficult times, and they also got to deal with this too.
I wanted to take a moment to talk about something that's been weighing on my heart. Not to point fingers, not to take sides, but to ask some questions that I think are important for all of us to think about. When we look at what happened recently, including the situation with Francis Whittleston and the conversations around Indigenous history, I think it shows what happens when things get off balance. When emotions, politics, and pain collides, we can lose that middle ground where understanding lives. First, I want to be clear. I have a deep love and respect for Indigenous people. I have nephews that are a part of the blood tribe. Growing up, the only people that would really be my friends were the Indigenous people, because they didn't judge me, but they accepted me for who I was. So believe me when I say I know Indigenous people's hearts. I love them very much. I have done countless news stories regarding Indigenous people, and I have seen firsthand and felt with them and cried with them for some of the pains they have gone through. What happened to the Indigenous people in Canada's history was wrong. Full stop. The trauma, the pain, and the loss they've carried for generations are real, and they deserve to be heard and believed and supported. It wasn't ordinary people who decided to marginalize Indigenous people, who decided to institutionalize them, who decided to shape public opinion about Indigenous people, who created harmful policies. And now, generations later, some of those same systems seem to be shifting the blame, not truly taking accountability, but encouraging division among regular people. Who do you think benefits from this division? Who caused the harm? And now, who's pretending to swoop in like a good guy and be in the best interest of the Indigenous people after the harm has been done, instead of taking accountability and responsibility and actually putting policies in place that would actually help our Indigenous brothers and sisters. I want to show you guys this clip, and I want to state this right now. My intent of showing this clip is not to poke or make fun of our Premier, Mark Carney. I just want to show you the history and what was said, because the people making the rules are not ordinary people. They're actually quite well educated people that are very good at dividing people and setting, you could say, a standard of society.
Teachers conference not long ago, you told about a program you have working at the Joseph B. Tyrrell School in Fort Smith for culturally retarded children. First of all, would you define a culturally retarded child for me?
A culturally retarded child in the context of the Northwest Territories is a child from a native background who for various reasons has not been in regular attendance in school. He's from a language background other than English, and who is behind in school, say 3 or 4 years. In many centers in southern Canada, the subculture groups, say in a working class area of a large city, you would have children who you would call culturally retarded. Certainly in the United States, in the large cities, and particularly in the eastern United States, among Negro groups, we have many examples of cultural retardation, and programs that have been developed to meet their needs, to try and upgrade their skills and bring them into contact with the dominant culture.
Could you tell me then a little bit about your program, how it got started?
Well, I don't agree with people that are high up or elite people setting any standards for community members to live by. I also want to point out how very little it's mentioned, if not ever mentioned in history, those people that have actually, there are people that are non-Indigenous that back in time did fight and stand up for the Indigenous people and the consequences they received for doing that. It's very interesting. You guys should look into history. Look up heroes that stood up for the Indigenous people and called out the wrongs, and then look what happened to them when they did that. And who were the people behind punishing the ordinary people that tried standing up for the Indigenous people. It's very interesting. When I see communities fighting with each other instead of standing together, I can't help but to wonder, is that exactly what the system wants? I'm not saying anyone today should feel guilty for the past, but maybe we should feel responsible for the future. What if instead of blaming each other, we start asking harder questions of the people and institutions who set these standards in the first place? When we stay divided, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, left and right, this group versus that group, we lose sight of our shared humanity. We lose sight of our shared humility. And we start living in echo chambers, reactions instead of listening. And that's where group polarization takes over. What would happen if we chose unity instead? If we decided that accountability doesn't have to mean shame, and that healing doesn't have to mean more division? Because when I look at Indigenous people, I see strength, beauty, and resilience. They have every right to be angry, to speak their truth, and to demand justice. But I also believe that healing, real healing, can only happen when we all stand together. But I also believe that healing, real healing, can only happen when we all stand together against systems that profit from keeping us apart. So as you listen to this conversation, I invite you not to take a side, but to take a breath. Ask yourself, who benefits when we are divided? And what would change if we started thinking real thinking for ourselves together? Thank you all for joining us here at Off the Record. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know it was very sensitive, very deep, and very intense, to say the least. But I hope you enjoyed this conversation and came away with something you learned that's new that you didn't know before. I just want to mention that this coming month of November, our theme will be the Notwithstanding Act. That's found in Section 33 of the Canadian Charts of Rights and Freedoms.